Alex Morgan stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the stars through the view screen. After decades of searching, humanity had finally found intelligent life. The massive alien ship grew larger as it approached, its surface covered in dark metal that seemed to absorb light. "Captain, they're responding to our hail," said Lieutenant Kate Wilson from her station. Morgan straightened his uniform. This moment would make history, the first official communication between humans and an alien civilization. The United Earth government had chosen the Horizon for this mission because it was a diplomatic vessel designed to make a good first impression. "On screen," Morgan ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. The view screen flickered and revealed a reptilian creature with scales the color of burnished copper. Sharp ridges ran along its skull, and yellow eyes with vertical pupils stared intensely at the human crew. When it spoke, its voice came through the translation system as deep and rumbling. "I am War Commander Zexthar of the Drakmar Empire. We have watched your kind for some time." Morgan nodded respectfully. "War Commander, I am Captain Alexander Morgan of Earth. We come in peace and friendship, hoping to establish." The alien made a harsh sound that might have been laughter. "Peace, friendship, these are words of weakness. Our scouts have observed your species for decades. You are known throughout the galaxy as cowards." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Morgan kept his expression neutral despite the insult. "I assure you, Commander, humanity is not. You flee from danger rather than face it," Zexthar continued. "You seek compromise instead of victory. You value preservation of life above glory in battle." He spat the words like they tasted bad. "The Drakmar Empire has no use for cowards." Chief Science Officer Lily Bennett stepped forward. "War Commander, perhaps we could share cultural information to better understand each other's values." The alien's eyes narrowed. "There is nothing to understand. The strong conquer. The weak perish. This is the only truth that matters." Morgan tried again. "We've brought representatives from Earth's nations to discuss trade, cultural exchange." "The transmission is being cut from their end," Wilson reported. The alien commander's final words came through before the screen went dark. "Prepare yourselves, humans. The Drakmar Empire will not soil itself with diplomacy when conquest is simpler." "They're charging weapons," shouted Security Chief Greg Peterson from Tactical Station. The alarm began to blare throughout the ship. "Raise shields," Morgan ordered, spinning toward the tactical station. "Shields at 40%. They are still coming online." Peterson's fingers flew across his console. The first blast hit before the Horizon's defenses were fully up. The ship shuddered violently, throwing crew members to the floor. Emergency lights flashed as smoke filled the bridge. "Return fire," Morgan commanded, pulling himself back to his feet. "Sir, we're a diplomatic vessel," Peterson reminded him. "Our weapons are minimal, defensive only." Another hit rocked the ship. A support beam crashed down near the science station, narrowly missing Officer Bennett. "Engine room reports heavy damage," Wilson called out. "We can't take another direct hit." Morgan made the only decision he could. "Plot an emergency jump. Get us out of here. Now." The stars blurred as the Horizon's emergency drive engaged, pulling them away from the alien warship. Damage reports flooded in from all decks. 12 crew members dead. Hull breaches on 3 levels. The medical bay overwhelmed with injured. As Earth appeared on their view screen, Morgan knew he carried terrible news. Humanity's first contact had become humanity's first interstellar war. And against an enemy that saw their very nature, their caution, their desire for peace, as proof of weakness. The Drakmar were coming, and they had no interest in talking. 6 months after the attack on the UES Horizon, Ambassador Olivia Carter stood before the Galactic Council. The massive chamber had been carved from a single asteroid, floating at the crossroads of several major space lanes. Representatives from 27 spacefaring species sat in tiered seats that rose high above the central speaking platform. Carter straightened her gray uniform, still bearing the small patch from the Horizon mission. Behind her stood Commander John Baker, his face lined with exhaustion. In the half-year since first contact, the Drakmar had destroyed 3 human colony worlds and dozens of ships. "Honorable members of the Council," Carter began, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. "Earth comes to you in a time of great need. The Drakmar Empire launched an unprovoked attack against our peaceful diplomatic mission. Since then, they have targeted civilian settlements and made clear their intention to wipe out humanity entirely." She paused, looking at the alien faces watching her. Some showed interest, others boredom, a few open hostility. "We ask for your help. Earth stands against a technologically superior enemy with centuries more experience in space warfare. We seek alliance to stop this aggression before another species falls to the Drakmarch." The council leader rose from the central podium. He was tall and willowy with skin that seemed to glow from within. His voice was soft, yet carried throughout the chamber. "We have reviewed your petition, Ambassador Carter. The attack on your vessel was unfortunate. However, the Council has a long-standing policy of non-intervention in military conflicts." Carter stepped forward. "This isn't just a military conflict. The Drakmar are targeting civilian populations. On Novaterra, they bombarded refugee centers after the military bases had already surrendered." Murmurs ran through the assembly, but the council leader raised a hand for silence. "The Drakmar are founding members of this council. Their right to territorial expansion is protected under laws that predate human spaceflight by 15 centuries. Territorial expansion." Commander Baker couldn't contain himself any longer. He stepped beside Carter. "They're not claiming territory. They're destroying everything. They'd vaporize 3 colony worlds after evacuation was complete. They don't want our planets. They want us extinct." A rumble of disapproval spread through the chamber at his outburst. The council leader's luminescent skin pulsed with color. "The council understands your distress, Commander. However, we have observed humanity for centuries through remote monitoring. Your species consistently chooses caution over boldness, compromise over conflict, and preservation over glory." Baker's face flushed with anger, but Carter placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Are you saying," she asked carefully, "that because we prefer peaceful solutions, we deserve to be destroyed? The universe operates by certain principles, Ambassador. The Council does not judge them. We merely observe. Species that display the traits you call virtues, restraint, caution, mercy, are often targeted by warrior cultures like the Drakmarch." A squat, rocky-skinned delegate rumbled from his seat. "The humans knew the risks of space travel. Every species faces its trial by fire." The council leader nodded. "The motion for intervention is denied. The council offers its sympathies but will maintain neutrality in this conflict." Carter stared in disbelief. "You're condemning billions to death." "Perhaps not," said the council leader. "History has shown that desperate species sometimes find unexpected solutions." As Carter and Baker were escorted from the chamber, a blue-skinned delegate approached them in the corridor. "They will not help you openly," she whispered, her 4 eyes darting around to check for observers. "But I have information about Drakmar physiology that might give your people a chance. Meet me at Docking Bay 12 in 1 hour." For the first time in months, Carter felt a flicker of hope. Sometimes the unexpected solution came from unexpected allies. General Maria Sanchez walked around the war room table, looking at the faces of Earth's military leaders. The underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains had become the main command center since the Drakmar had destroyed the space headquarters in orbit around Mars. "The situation is worse than we thought," she said, pointing to the holographic display showing the movement of enemy ships. "Their main fleet will reach Earth in 17 days. Our intelligence shows they have over 400 warships. We have 98 combat-ready vessels." Admiral Frank Wilson rubbed his tired eyes. "What about the orbital defense platforms?" Colonel Diane Lee shook her head. "The platforms will slow them down, but not enough. Based on what happened at the outer colonies, they'll cut through our defenses in hours, not days." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Humanity was facing extinction. Dr. Alan Rivera, the head of xenobiology, cleared his throat. He was not usually invited to military planning sessions, but after the meeting with the Galactic Council, Ambassador Carter had insisted he join them. There might be another way, he said quietly. All eyes turned to him. Rivera tapped commands into the table console. The hologram changed to show detailed scans of Drakmar physiology, information provided by their secret ally from the Council. The Drakmar evolved on a world with minimal disease pressure, he explained. Their immune systems are incredibly simple compared to ours. They've never experienced anything like Earth's viral or bacterial diversity. General Sanchez frowned. You're suggesting biological warfare. Not exactly, Rivera replied. The Drakmar call us cowards because we avoid unnecessary risks. But that caution gave us something they lack: a sophisticated understanding of disease and immunity. He zoomed in on the alien brain structure. We can engineer a non-lethal virus that temporarily affects their neural pathways, specifically the regions controlling aggression and decision-making. It would essentially force a ceasefire by making them unable to pursue warfare for several weeks. Admiral Wilson looked skeptical. You want to? What? Make them peaceful? Not peaceful, Rivera corrected. Just temporarily unable to coordinate complex military operations. It would disrupt their command structure without killing them. A solution that doesn't require destroying their entire species, Colonel Lee said slowly. How very human of us. General Sanchez studied the biological diagrams. The Drakmar call our caution a weakness. They mocked us for seeking alternatives to violence. A small smile appeared on her face. Now those same traits might save us. There's still one problem, Rivera said. We need to deliver the virus to their fleet. Their ships have advanced filtration systems. We can't just release it into space. We need to get it inside their vessels, ideally the command ships first. Admiral Wilson tapped his fingers on the table. We'd need a small, fast ship that could slip past their defenses, something they wouldn't see as a military threat. A medical research vessel, suggested Colonel Lee. The UES Nightingale has advanced stealth capabilities. We were planning to use it to evacuate scientists from Jupiter Station. But General Sanchez nodded. We'd need volunteers. It would be extremely dangerous. I think we'll find people willing to take that risk, Admiral Wilson said, especially with the alternative being the end of our species. General Sanchez straightened up and looked around the room. Then we have a plan. Dr. Rivera, how quickly can you develop this virus? With the data we received, 5 days, maybe 4 if I pull in everyone from the biology department. Do it, she ordered. Operation Peaceful Night begins now. For the first time since the war began, a feeling of hope spread through the room. The very traits the Drakmar had mocked, humanity's caution, planning, and reluctance to destroy, might become the weapons that saved Earth. The UES Nightingale drifted silently through space, its engines running at minimal power. Captain Samantha Reed stood on the bridge, watching the massive Drakmar fleet on the main screen. Hundreds of warships hung against the blackness of space, their metal hulls glinting in the light of a distant sun. Status report, she said quietly, though there was no chance the enemy could hear them. Cloaking field is holding, replied Navigator Paul Johnson from his station. Their sensors haven't picked us up yet. Captain Reed nodded. The Nightingale was a medical research vessel, not designed for combat, but its specialized equipment made it perfect for their mission. Its advanced cloaking technology, originally created to approach planets with dangerous atmospheric conditions, now hid them from the Drakmarch. Engineering to bridge, came the voice of Chief Engineer Ryan Cooper over the comms system. The cloaking field is drawing more power than expected. We've got maybe 10 minutes before fluctuations might give away our position. Understood, Reed replied. Dr. Hayes, are we ready? In the ship's laboratory section, Dr. Linda Hayes made final adjustments to a row of small metal canisters. Each contained billions of engineered viral particles suspended in an aerosol mixture. The virus, nicknamed Peaceful Night, was designed to temporarily suppress the aggressive impulses in the Drakmar brain. "Canisters are primed and ready," she confirmed. "The delivery system is set." Captain Reed took a deep breath. "Tactical, identify primary targets." Lieutenant Eric Mitchell studied his screen. "The command ship is at coordinates 227 Mark 43. We've identified 4 additional control vessels. Optimal deployment points marked. Take us in, navigator." Nice and slow, the Nightingale glided toward the heart of the enemy fleet. Through the view screen, the enormous Drakmar command ship grew larger. It was at least 20 times the size of their small vessel, covered in weapon emplacements and launch bays for fighter craft. "We're in position for the first deployment," reported Navigator Johnson, his voice tight with tension. Captain Reed gave the order. "Launch canister 1." A soft thump vibrated through the deck as the first canister was ejected from the ship. It flew silently toward the Drakmar vessel, a tiny object barely visible against the massive hull. When it made contact, microscopic drills began boring through the alien metal, seeking the ship's air circulation system. "Canister 1 has attached and is penetrating," reported Lieutenant Mitchell. "Move to the next target," ordered Reed. The Nightingale slipped between the giant warships like a fish swimming through a kelp forest. One by one, they deployed the remaining canisters, each targeted at a different control ship. "Final canister away," Mitchell announced. "All 5 have successfully attached and penetration is underway." "Now we wait," said Reed, her fingers gripping the armrests of her chair. The bridge crew watched in tense silence as their sensors monitored the viral spread. After 20 minutes, the first signs appeared on the main Drakmar vessel. Power fluctuations rippled through its weapon systems. Communication chatter between ships became erratic. "It's working," Dr. Hayes whispered from her station. "The virus is affecting their neural functions." Chief Engineer Cooper's voice came through again. "Captain, the cloaking field is starting to fail. We need to leave now." "Get us out of here," ordered Reed. "Our mission is complete." As the Nightingale pulled away from the fleet, they watched the Drakmar ships begin to drift out of formation. No one fired upon the human vessel as it slipped away and jumped to faster than light speed. In the ship's small mess hall later, the crew gathered around a table. No one spoke much. They were exhausted from the tension of their mission. But beneath the fatigue was a new feeling: hope. "To Operation Peaceful Night," Captain Reed said, raising a cup of coffee. "And to being cowards." The crew laughed and joined the toast. Sometimes, being cautious and clever was better than being fierce and strong. Within days, the engineered virus had spread throughout the entire Drakmar fleet. The massive warships that had been poised to attack Earth now drifted in disarray, their crews unable to coordinate complex military actions. The temporary suppression of their aggressive brain functions had thrown their strict hierarchy into chaos. On the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Olivia Carter stood once more before the assembled delegates. This time, the mood in the Grand Chamber was very different. Urgent conversations filled the air as news of the Drakmar fleet's condition spread through the galaxy. "What have you done?" demanded the council leader, rising to his full height and looking down at the human representative. His luminescent skin pulsed with rapid colors that suggested alarm. "We defended ourselves," Carter replied calmly. "The virus affects the Drakmar neural pathways temporarily. In approximately 1 month, all affected individuals will return to normal function. No permanent harm has been done." A Drakmar representative, one of the few who had not been with the fleet, pushed his way to the front of his section. His scales stood on end with rage. "This is biological warfare," he roared. "An atrocity against our people. The Council must punish the humans for this violation." "This is mercy," Carter corrected. "We could have developed a lethal pathogen that would have wiped out your entire species. We chose not to. We chose the path that preserved life, yours and ours." The chamber erupted in argument. Some species applauded the human solution, while others expressed horror at the use of biological agents, regardless of intent. The blue-skinned delegate who had secretly helped Earth stepped forward. The humans acted in self-defense against an enemy that refused to consider peace. They chose the least harmful option available to them. Carter raised her voice to be heard above the noise. For centuries, you've watched us from afar and judged our caution as weakness. Now you see the truth. Humanity's greatest strength is precisely what the Drakmar mocked as cowardice. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of various alien delegates. We analyze. We plan. We find solutions that others overlook. And when pushed to the edge of extinction, we fight with weapons you never anticipated. A hush fell over the assembly as reports continued to arrive from across Drakmar space. Without the driving force of aggression, their military hierarchy had collapsed. The 7 species they had conquered over the past century were rising up in rebellion. Border worlds were declaring independence. The council leader called for order. The balance of power in our galaxy has shifted in ways we cannot yet fully understand. The council must reconvene to address these unprecedented developments. We look forward to those discussions, Ambassador Carter said. But first, we have peace terms to negotiate with the Drakmar. The Drakmar representative hissed. We will never surrender to cowards. It's not surrender, Carter replied. It's evolution. The Drakmar Empire was built on the principle that might makes right. But today, you discovered that innovation can overcome force, and restraint can be more powerful than rage. As the council session ended, Ambassador Carter met with General Sanchez via secure communication. How are things back home? Carter asked. Earth is celebrating, Sanchez replied. The defensive platforms are standing down, but we're keeping the virus research active, just in case. Carter nodded. The council is in shock. No one expected us to find a solution, especially not one that didn't involve destruction. The Drakmar call us cowards because we value life, Sanchez said. They never understood that sometimes finding another way takes more courage than rushing into battle. As news spread across the galaxy, other species began to look at humans differently. Perhaps there was wisdom in caution after all. Perhaps the so-called cowards of the stars had something to teach them all. 3 months after Operation Peaceful Night, the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council hosted an historic meeting. For the first time, humans and Drakmar sat across from each other at a peace negotiation table. The effects of the virus had faded weeks ago, but the memory of vulnerability remained fresh in the minds of the once unstoppable warriors. High Commander Zexthar, his copper scales dulled from stress, glared across the table at the human delegation. General Maria Sanchez and Ambassador Olivia Carter sat calmly, facing the alien who had once promised to exterminate their species. Your biological attack violated all principles of honorable warfare, Zexthar growled, his clawed hands clenching on the table's surface. There is no honor in trying to wipe out a species that posed no threat to you, replied Ambassador Carter, her voice steady. We chose the option that saved the most lives, both human and Drakmar. The council leader stood between the two delegations. His luminescent skin glowed softly as he spoke. These proceedings are not to assign blame, but to establish lasting peace. Both parties have agreed to these negotiations in good faith. General Sanchez placed a data tablet on the table. Here are our terms. The Drakmar Empire will withdraw from all human colonies. A neutral zone will be established between our territories, and the Drakmar will recognize the independence of the 7 species they conquered in the Orion Arm. Zexthar's yellow eyes narrowed to slits. These terms are unacceptable. You would dismantle our empire because of one temporary victory. Dr. Alan Rivera, who had joined the human delegation as a scientific advisor, leaned forward. High Commander, we've studied your biology extensively now. The virus we created could be modified in countless ways. This negotiation isn't happening because we defeated your fleet in battle, but because of what you now know we're capable of. The Drakmar delegation conferred among themselves, speaking in harsh whispers. There is another option, continued Ambassador Carter. Instead of remaining enemies, we could become allies. Your strength combined with our innovation. The Drakmar have always valued strength. Show your strength now by choosing a new path. The chamber fell silent as Zexthar considered her words. The other council members watched intently, aware that this moment might reshape galactic politics for centuries. After a long pause, the Drakmar commander spoke. His voice had lost some of its harshness. In our history, we have conquered many worlds and many species. None have ever stopped us as you did. None have shown us mercy when they had the power to destroy. He looked at his fellow Drakmar before continuing. Perhaps there is wisdom in the human approach after all. We will negotiate. The relief in the chamber was almost physical. Representatives from other species began to murmur among themselves. The negotiations lasted for 7 days. There were heated arguments and tense moments when it seemed everything might fall apart. But in the end, the human Drakmar Accord was signed. The Drakmar would maintain their core worlds but grant independence to conquered species. The humans would share medical and scientific knowledge, though not the specific virus technology. And together, they would form a joint defense force to patrol the borders of both territories. As the final documents were signed, Zexthar approached General Sanchez privately. "When we first encountered your kind, we saw your caution as weakness," he said. "We were wrong." Sanchez nodded. Many species make that mistake. They think that because we try to avoid conflict, we don't know how to fight. A dangerous misunderstanding, agreed the Drakmar commander, one that nearly destroyed us. As the delegates prepared to return to their homeworlds, news arrived of another aggressive species, the Xilari, expanding their territory through force. They had already conquered 2 worlds and showed no signs of stopping. The council leader looked meaningfully at the human and Drakmar delegations. "It seems your new alliance may be tested sooner than expected." 5 years after the signing of the human Drakmar Accord, Captain Alex Morgan stood on the observation deck of the UES Concord. The newly commissioned vessel was the largest human ship ever built, a symbol of Earth's new standing in the galaxy. Beside him stood Krelvor, his Drakmar counterpart, and now, surprisingly, his friend. "I remember our first meeting," Morgan said, looking out at the stars. "Your commander called us cowards." Krelvor made a clicking sound that humans had learned was Drakmar laughter. "The greatest mistake our empire ever made. We saw your careful nature, your reluctance to rush into battle, and thought it weakness." Below them, through the viewports, Earth glowed blue and green. The planet was no longer under threat, but had become the headquarters of a new interstellar alliance. Ships from a dozen species moved through the orbital lanes, evidence of the trade and cooperation that had flourished since the war ended. "The council meeting begins in an hour," said Lieutenant Kate Wilson as she approached the 2 captains. She had served with Morgan on the horizon during that first disastrous contact, and now served as his executive officer on the Concord. "The vote on sanctions against the Xilari expansion should be interesting," she added. "The Xilari still don't understand," rumbled Krelvor. "They see our alliance as weakness, just as we once viewed humans." "They'll learn," Morgan replied, "one way or another." On the central planet of the Galactic Council, representatives from over 40 spacefaring species gathered to address the Xilari threat. The aggressive insectoid race had conquered 3 star systems in the past year, ignoring all diplomatic efforts to stop their expansion. The council leader recognized Ambassador Olivia Carter, now serving as the first human High Commissioner of the Council. "The combined human Drakmar fleet stands ready to enforce the Council's decision," she announced. "We propose economic sanctions first, with military intervention only as a last resort." A Xilari delegate rose from his seat, mandibles clicking angrily. "The humans have infected even the mighty Drakmar with their cowardice. Why waste time with sanctions when conflict is inevitable?" High Commander Zexthar, now a respected voice in council proceedings, stood to his full height. His scales gleamed with health and purpose as he addressed the assembly. "We once made the same mistake you are making now," he said to the Xilari. "We confused restraint for weakness. The humans taught us that there is courage in caution, strength in strategy, and wisdom in finding alternatives to destruction." The Xilari delegate hissed, but returned to his seat. The council voted overwhelmingly to implement sanctions against the aggressive species. Later, in the council gardens, Dr. Alan Rivera sat with General Maria Sanchez, both now serving as advisors to the human delegation. "Do you think the Xilari will back down?" Rivera asked. Sanchez shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not. But thanks to the accord, we now have options other than surrender or extinction. That's what matters." Rivera nodded. "When the Drakmar attacked us, they thought they were targeting our weakness. Instead, they awakened our greatest strength." As evening fell, Ambassador Carter took her place at the central podium of the council chamber, a position once denied to her species. The room was packed with delegates for the closing ceremony of the year's session. "Throughout human history," she said, "those labeled as cowards were often simply those who saw beyond the immediate glory of battle to the long-term consequences of action. Today, our galaxy faces a choice between the old path of conquest and a new way forward." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of allies and former enemies alike. "The so-called cowards of the stars invite you to join us in building something greater than any empire, a future where strength protects rather than destroys, where courage means doing what is right, not what is easy, and where different species find power in cooperation rather than conquest." As the delegates rose in applause, the message echoed clear throughout the galaxy. In the end, it was the cowards who had changed the course of history, not through force of arms, but through the courage to find another way.